When spirit defies the impossible, what I learned from Emilee's miraculous survival. Have you ever wondered what happens when your body gives up, but something deeper inside you refuses to quit? I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Emilee Bryant, a woman whose story fundamentally challenges everything we believe about human resilience. Her experience transcends medical explanation and invites us to consider a profound truth that sometimes our spirit can carry us through situations our physical bodies simply shouldn't survive. Emilee isn't just a survivor. She's a revolutionary force showing us what's possible when we tap into the power beyond our physical limitations. Her courage in sharing her story has already transformed countless lives, creating ripples of hope that extend far beyond her immediate circle. The operating room was chaotic, blood everywhere, doctors frantically working, and Emilee technically dying on the table during what should have been the joyful culmination of childbirth was somehow still present, still aware, still fighting. I shouldn't have been conscious, she told me, her voice steady despite recounting her own near death. I lost so much blood during my emergency partial hysterectomy that medically I should have been unconscious. But something beyond my physical body kept me alert, kept me there. That something is what I want to explore with you today. That invisible force that defies medical textbooks, that spiritual resilience that refuses to bow to physical limitations. For high achieving women, especially, those who've spent years in survival mode, leading teams, raising families, holding down households, this message carries special weight. Because at some point, grinding gives way to grounding. At some point, we must recognize that our strength isn't just physical or mental, it's spiritual. Emilee's story isn't unique in its broad strokes. Childbirth complications happen, medical emergencies occur, but what makes her experience extraordinary is how it illuminates the power of living by the Spirit rather than being limited by physical circumstances. When doctors told her family to prepare for the worst, when her vital signs suggested the end was near, Emilee described hearing an inner voice, a divine guidance that she chose to obey despite her circumstances. This obedience, she believes, is what carried her through clinical death and back. The flesh, our bodies, our limitations, they're real, she explained, but they're not the final word. I've been thinking about this concept constantly since our conversation. What does it mean to live by the Spirit rather than the flesh? And how might this perspective transform how we navigate our most impossible moments? Let me share another remarkable story that parallels Amelia and Malee's experience. Emily Bondi faced a near fatal labor with extreme blood loss and trauma that left medical professionals increasingly desperate as complications mounted rapidly. The situation deteriorated so quickly that doctors feared for both mother and child. What's fascinating is how Emily describes being spiritually sustained throughout this ordeal, feeling a divine presence guiding both her mind and body when her physical resources were completely depleted. In that moment, Emily later shared, when everything was chaos around me, there was this inexplicable peace within me. I couldn't control what was happening to my body, but I could surrender to something greater than myself. She survived what many considered medically impossible while maintaining an inexplicable calm under pressure. The medical staff was astonished not just by her survival, but by her demeanor throughout the crisis. Today, her testimony inspires thousands about trusting spiritual strength over physical fear. The parallels between these women's experiences are striking. Both faced clinical death. Both found supernatural resilience through faith driven obedience. Both attribute their survival not to medical intervention alone, but to something more profound. This pattern extends beyond individual stories. Consider the broader context of maternal health crises, particularly among Black women in America, who face disproportionately high mortality rates due partly to systemic biases. The statistics are sobering. Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy related causes than white women, regardless of education or income level. Yet within this crisis, there are powerful stories of survival. Many women report that listening closely to their intuition, sometimes described as divine prompting, saved their lives when medical professionals failed them. One woman I spoke with described insisting on additional testing despite being told repeatedly that her symptoms were normal. That insistence, which she attributes to a spiritual nudging, led to the discovery of a life threatening condition that would have been fatal if left untreated. Community support networks rooted in spirituality have become critical advocacy tools. These survivors have transformed their experiences into action, changing policies at local hospitals, creating educational resources for expectant mothers of color, and helping reduce preventable deaths within their communities. Their stories underscore how living by the Spirit can literally save lives and inspire institutional change. Their experiences aren't just about individual survival, they're about transforming systems through spiritual obedience and advocacy. A missionary's near death experience offers yet another perspective that reinforces what Emilee discovered. During surgery overseas, this man was clinically dead before resuscitation efforts succeeded after several minutes without heartbeat or breath. His testimony credits an unbroken focus on divine promises throughout his ordeal, not panic, as the crucial factor enabling his return. God met me there, he recounts emotionally. In that space between life and death, when my body had given up, my spirit was more alive than ever. Despite bleak predictions from medical professionals, he recovered fully and now shares his message worldwide, encouraging others not just to survive adversity, but to thrive spiritually because of it. His recovery is recognized as miraculous by local doctors who had no medical explanation for his survival. Today, he inspires global audiences about the power of choosing spirit over flesh, especially when facing literal mortality. But here's where I want to pause and acknowledge something important. These stories might sound distant if you're not someone who frames your life in spiritual terms. You might be thinking that's nice for them, but I don't have that kind of faith. I get it. But I suggest that what Emilee and others experience transcends any particular religious framework. At its core, this is about recognizing that we are more than our physical limitations, that something within us, call it spirit, consciousness, inner wisdom, or simply the will to live, can sometimes defy what science tells us should be possible. The question becomes, how do we access that power? How do we live more from that place of spiritual resilience rather than being defined by our physical or circumstantial limitations? Emilie offered a profound insight. It starts with listening, she said, really listening to that inner voice that's aligned with your highest good, with truth, with love. And then this is the hard part, having the courage to obey it, even when it doesn't make logical sense. This is where the rubber meets the road for many of us, especially those high achieving women who've spent years in survival mode. We're so accustomed to pushing through, to relying on our own strength, to making things happen through sheer force of will. The idea of surrendering to something beyond ourselves, of listening and obeying rather than controlling and directing, can feel not just foreign, but frightening. Yet, what if our greatest strength lies not in pushing harder, but in aligning more deeply with that spiritual core? What if true power comes not from forcing our way through obstacles, but from flowing with a wisdom greater than our own? For Black women, especially, who've historically carried so much, who've been expected to be strong beyond reason, who've worn the superwoman cape until it's threadbare. This message offers a radical reframing. Your strength isn't just about endurance, it's about connection to something divine within you that transcends physical limitations. This isn't about abandoning responsibility or practical action. Emilee didn't just lie there and hope for the best. Emilee Bondi didn't refuse medical intervention. The missionary didn't decline surgery. But in each case, their physical actions were guided by spiritual attunement, by listening to and obeying that inner voice aligned with their highest good. So, what might this look like in our daily lives when we're not facing life or death emergencies? It might look like pausing before making decisions to check whether you're responding from fear or comfort versus deeper conviction or purpose. It might mean choosing courageously, even when uncomfortable, to follow your inner guidance aligned with higher values instead of mere habit or anxiety. It might mean recognizing when you're operating from survival mode rather than spiritual alignment and having the courage to shift. When Emilee was at her physically weakest, literally dying on that operating table, she was paradoxically at her spiritually strongest. Her softness, her surrender to divine guidance rather than panic, became her salvation. This is the profound paradox at the heart of spiritual resilience. Sometimes we must become soft to access our greatest strength. I'm reminded of water, how it can be both gentle enough to nurture life and powerful enough to carve through stone. Its strength comes not from hardness, but from persistent flow, from alignment with its nature. So too with us. Our greatest power may come not from forcing, controlling, or surviving, but from aligning with our spiritual nature, that part of us that knows, that listens, that flows with divine guidance. Today, I challenge you to recognize the power that exists beyond your physical limitations, to understand that your greatest strength may not be in pushing harder, but in surrendering to something greater. I challenge you to listen, truly listen to that inner voice that speaks of possibility when everything around you screams impossibility. Because what Emilee and countless others have shown us is that the human spirit, when aligned with divine purpose, can transcend what medicine, science, and logic tell us is possible. Your body may have limitations, but your spirit knows no bounds. So the next time you face your own impossible moment, whether it's a medical crisis, a career challenge, a relationship breakdown, or simply the weight of daily existence, remember Emilee on that operating table. Remember that you too have access to a power beyond physical explanation. Remember that sometimes the most revolutionary act is not to fight harder, but to surrender more deeply to the wisdom within. Your spirit is waiting. The question is, are you ready to listen?